So I want to say good morning to everybody. I'm Karen Walker. I'm Associate Director of Research Development. I want to thank you all for attending Proposal Development Workshop number 13, which is crafting evaluation plans. And in a moment, Wendy and Aisha will introduce themselves and dive right into this topic. Next week on the 30th, we're going to host session 14, which is working with the ASU Foundation. So if you're not signed up for that, please be sure to sign up for it. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Wendy and Aisha to get us going into this.
All right, I will start since my name is first. Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy Barnard. I work at CREST, which is the College Research and Evaluation Services team. We fall under Knowledge Enterprise so that we are considered an independent evaluator at ASU. And our group currently has about 40 proposals that we're working with faculty, both at ASU and outside of ASU on their evaluation work. And I will let Aisha introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Aisha Boyce. I'm an associate professor in the ASU Teachers College, and I co-direct the STEM Program Evaluation Lab. It's part of my research. So I conduct evaluations, teach evaluations, and conduct research on evaluations. And like Wendy, I have a number of projects that I work on, primarily with projects outside of ASU, but I do serve as an independent evaluator for a few ASU projects as well. So looking forward to spending some time with you all this morning.
Okay, so this is our outline. If everyone could,
I think we're seeing your, sorry, I think we're just seeing your, it's just like the, like what you see, it's not on the it's not the play PowerPoint yet, like you, or the share.
All right, let's try
It's not in
that.
presenter mode.
Huh. Is it still showing it that way?
Yeah, yeah, I see that you have clicked it, but we're just still seeing, do you have two screens?
I do, let me.
Never a dull moment.
No, let's see. Let's try again. Oops. Okay. Okay, is that working?
It's still just showing the I mean, we can see the outline, but it's not in presenter mode. It's in
That is so weird. I wonder if it's set up that way. I share my screen all the time. Do you want to try sharing?
Oh yeah, sure. Maybe it's totally possible something I did. Let me
No, not you necessarily. I wonder if it's set up through the Zoom.
Let's see.
No stop sharing. In the meantime, if everyone could go into the chat and introduce themselves, that would be fantastic. If you're faculty, staff, if you're working on a grant, anything that might be pertinent to this information, to this session would be great.
Okay.
Yeah. Looks like it's working for you. Nice.
No worries.
It's been that kind of day.
It really has. Let's see. Okay, go ahead, Wendy.
So if everyone could introduce themselves in the chat. Is the chat? It looks like it's, oh, there we go. Okay, great. As you're all introducing yourself, I will just let you know the way that this is set up is we will go through introductions, which we started. We'll talk about program evaluation, the difference between evaluation and research, and the importance of how that is in terms of writing your proposal. And we'll also provide example solicitations and evaluation sections, as well as tips. And then we'll leave lots and lots of times for questions and answers. Okay, so yes, in the chat box, department, position, what funding agencies, any grants that you're hoping to apply for, anything that you would like us to know so that we can make sure we include as we're talking through this. Oh, okay. Oh, good. Lots of different things. Okay. All right. All right, well, welcome. This is a nice group. Just really briefly, in terms of CREST, we are one of the independent evaluation units at ASU. There are many independent evaluations across ASU. We are just one of them, and I will say most of us will do very similar work with you all. It's a collaborative process, and one of the things that we work with is helping faculty, especially junior faculty, as they're working through grant proposals within the same, something that's new. Is that my? Okay, got it. We will frame the evaluation questions aligned with the program goals. And we'll talk a little bit about this, understanding that proposals often ask for research and evaluation. And those two should be compatible with each other and should be aligned within the proposal. So the program evaluator will make sure that that happens. Determine the appropriate methodologies. It's very different if you're having a workshop for 3,000 people versus a very intimate program for 3 or 4 graduate students where you're teaching very specific skills. So your evaluator will help you determine what you need to collect in the methodologies in which to do that. Develop and disseminate data collection tools. Writing survey questions seems like, you know, it can be very easy depending on the question, but given the experience of program evaluators, usually there will be very nuanced ways to ask questions to solicit the information that you all are looking for. Analyze data for interpretable findings. And I think Aisha and I will both agree that you should never, as a program evaluator, collect data just for the sake of collecting data because you might want to use it at some point. All data that's collected really should be used for decision making, and data should be interpretable. So really thinking through what should be collected and when. And then lastly, preparing reports and briefs and presentations to show what the data, to interpret the results, show what the data looks like, and then offer recommendations.
Great. So just a little bit about me. I'm an associate professor in a teacher's college, and I have 3 areas of scholarship. The first is social justice oriented evaluation. The second is teaching and mentoring and learning within evaluation. And the third is STEM evaluation context. And so in addition to conducting evaluations, I also conduct research on evaluations and write about the process of evaluation. And prior to coming to ASU, I was at UNC Greensboro. And so now my colleague, Aileen Reed and I, we both co-run the SPEL, and we support across both institutions about currently 3 undergraduate students and 11 graduate students and 1 soft money position for folks to kind of assist us with the evaluations that we run. And so just a little bit about program evaluation so that you all have a sense. I think sometimes when people are applying for grants, you all will be assisting others or you're working in your own respective fields. But as you can tell from the work that Wendy does and the work that I do, the field of evaluation is actually its own field, and it emerged from the practice of applying social science methodology to really examine the impact of a lot of programs, educational and social and housing and criminal justice programs that began in the 1960s. And so they said, oh, well, what are some of the outcomes of these programs? How do we know these programs are working? And so they hired psychologists and sociologists to really do this work. And one of the things that they found was that, oh, we need a whole field dedicated to helping us with issues of accountability and understanding outcomes and impact of all different sorts of programs.
So just a little bit about the difference between research and program evaluation. Research is really written into your proposal is the work that you want to do that is to prove something. The evaluation and the reasons evaluation really became popular, I will say that sort of in quotes, in the United States was to look at some of these social service programs that were put into place. And it wasn't just to say, okay, yes, these work as though it was a binary outcome. It was really to look at what's working with whom. So it's to improve the work that is being done. And that the picture there, the hourglass shows that evaluation, again, is collecting information used for decision making. It's focused on the stakeholders, which can be anywhere from the participants to community members, to faculty members, whoever is engaged in the process of the work that's happening. Evaluation is really looking at how well does it work? Where can we make improvements? And that is why evaluation should be set up in such a way where you're getting continual feedback from the people collecting data. You shouldn't anticipate annual report that shows you what happened throughout the year and the impact that it made. That is research where you're keeping the people who are participating in some ways blind to the findings. Evaluation that never will do that. It is done in such a way that you can continue to reimagine and iterate the program pieces so that you are getting better and better and better outcomes. And the evaluation should be used to make decisions, whereas, like I said, the research is really drawing conclusions. And sometimes you don't even see the results of data that's been collected for years. Whereas evaluation, if that happens with a program evaluator, then needing to set up feedback loops and regular meetings really should occur because you should be talking to your evaluator at least quarterly, but more often monthly. And going into some example, does anyone have questions there? Or Aisha, do you want to say anything?
Oh, no, this is perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone have questions? Okay, we'll keep going. Raise your hand if you do. So this is an example solicitation. This is from NSF. And this is what they have in their assessment and evaluation section. And it just really talks about meaningful assessment, using appropriate metrics, assessing the effectiveness of activities, thinking about whether it's done aggregated. Are you looking at the program as a whole, or are you looking at just the individual project? Are you looking at individuals? Are you looking across a summary of the impact of the program? And also thinking about monitoring. So when it says PIs are expected to be accountable for carrying out the activities, it's not so much as that the evaluator is grading them A+, C-. It really is the proposal indicated that a target would be 50% women would be included as participants. And the evaluation is finding that in fact is not the case, or it is the case. If it's not the case, it's not as though, you get a warning from NSF. But what you do need to do is have a contingency plan, right? So everything, as you're not meeting metrics, the evaluation team can help you talk through different ways to potentially meet those metrics and that you're going to be held accountable. You have been given taxpayer money for your project, and you need to provide information that you are in fact doing what you said you would do. You can see that this language is very vague and broad. And this is the fact in some solicitations. Other solicitations, U.S. Department of Education, will be very specific. They will have performance metrics that you need to account for. They will have benchmarks. So it really will depend on the solicitation. A strong evaluation piece needs to be aligned with what the evaluation indicators are in the actual solicitation. So always make sure that if you're working with an evaluator, and we have that later down as a tip, make sure you provide them the solicitation so that they can make sure that they're answering the questions clearly, or if it's vague like this, that they at least know that they can put in various indicators that will make sense in this context. So this is focused on the broader impact section. And this is often where, if it's a Department of Education, that one is obviously education related. In this case, if it's an NSF grant, a Department of Energy grant, Department of Defense grant, NIH grants, oftentimes they will have a section just simply called broader impacts. And that includes everything from education to culture of inclusion. And these are pieces that are often called out. So making sure that your broader impacts, your broader participation thinks through each one of these pieces will be really beneficial for you in terms of providing activities, and also for the evaluator to help you define what will be collected and what will help you make your program better and better each year. The first piece is the impact to society. That is often the really great research that's being done. What is innovative? What are you doing that will benefit communities, whether it's a solar project, whether it is a project for, greening a certain area, whatever that might look like, you'll need to think about how that impacts communities. And then the evaluator may or may not participate in that part of the work to collect data. Sometimes it is just the researchers, where they go out, they know that their research has impacted communities in such a way that they can write about it. But oftentimes the evaluator can be pulled in if they're not sure. So that is one piece that the evaluation team will need to think about along with the faculty member. The most common one is educational outreach. This is, again, something that has been a requirement now for NSF. It is something that basically says, again, you're using taxpayer money. Please please show the community what you're doing. And this can be anything from ASU's Open Door, where faculty members set up an exhibit, to creating and cultivating a exhibit at a science museum. But the evaluation team will definitely want to help you there. What are the types of activities? Are they being implemented? How is it impacting, for example, STEM education or educator development? And how are you engaging the public? Inclusion of underrepresented groups. This will differ by the type of grant that you are going for, and also the discipline that you are in. But thinking about, does the group of graduate students that you're working with, are they representative of the community at large? Are there certain groups that are underrepresented in the field? And your goal is to try to increase representation, not at the exclusion of others, but making sure that you have a diverse group that include those who may be marginalized within your discipline. And that can include women, persons with disabilities, and other underrepresented groups. And I will say persons with disabilities is one that oftentimes is overlooked. And I would encourage you, if there's ways to make sure that you are including that in your proposal, that is something that would be rated very highly. And then workforce development. How are you impacting the next generation of workforce? Are you providing skills that are necessary for the field or the discipline? And are participants in your program, learning those skills so that they're competitive in the workforce? And then lastly, another one that often falls in here are partnerships and collaboration. Are you working with industry groups? Are you working with schools? Are you working with another governmental agency? Are you working with other universities? And all of those pieces need to be captured to show that it's not just a name on a collaboration letter, that there's actual co-creation and collaboration that's happening after the grant is funded. And the evaluator can help you determine metrics to assess those pieces. Go to the next slide. And I'm doing a lot of talking, Aisha, if you want to jump in.
Yes, definitely.
Do you want me to keep talking on this one?
Yeah, sure. You can do this one and I'll hop in on the next one.
Okay, perfect. And this is one that I wrote. So oftentimes we get calls or emails from, again, faculty who have not put a grant in yet. So this is just a quick checklist. It's not going to be all inclusive, but the most important things that will help the evaluator jump in and help you right away. The evaluation team needs from you the project narrative. Does not have to be all the finite details of the research you're doing, but if you have even a bulleted outline of the activities that you plan to do, that is really helpful in creating the evaluation plan. Be honest about your budget. Sometimes people have large budgets, sometimes they're smaller budgets, but you certainly don't want to tell your evaluator that you have a certain amount of money and then they write a comprehensive evaluation plan that fits that budget. And then the evaluation dollars shrink as you put the budget in. So, evaluators can oftentimes work within any budget within reason. So just be honest about the evaluation, because a larger evaluation will include different methodologies than a smaller budget. How much space do you have in the proposal? Do you just have a paragraph? If you do, just let us know because, we can write a page, we can write a paragraph, but, obviously you all have written things before and it is hard to see all the time and effort put into a proposal when all of that information is cut out. So just again, be honest about the space you have. And that ties into an indication of what is needed. Do you need an evaluation plan? Do you need a logic model? And that can be tied to the solicitation that you will also be sending and also the space that you have. And then lastly, the timeline. So proposal might be due July 15th, but the entire PI team is leaving the country June 30th. So you need to tell the evaluator that it needs to be done June 20th. As you can imagine, the way that different cycles run, there are times where we are very busy. So making sure that we know the timeline and the deadline that you need the proposal, our section written is really important. And then the evaluation team will provide you a letter of support. And just make sure you give us the name of the proposal so that we can write that in the letter. Again, the budget narrative, the evaluation plan that matches the narrative that you provide. And then sometimes we're asked for language for the data management plan. Sometimes there's just boilerplate language that's used, but if you do need language from that, that's something that we can give that the evaluation team usually has language for. All right, turn it over to Aisha.
Awesome. So there are a few tips for a well-written evaluation plan. And of course, whoever your evaluator is will work with you on the evaluation plan. They will often, take the lead on writing this. But, really the most important thing is to follow the program solicitation because one of the things that Wendy and I have found is that different solicitations have different rules for how they want the evaluation to be. I'm actually submitting an evaluation plan today for an HBCU Up grant with the National Science Foundation. And we had written everything out. And then we went back and we checked the solicitation and they actually decided that they want the evaluation plan, the management plan in a completely different place than in the project narrative. And this was something that I think they might have changed last week that we didn't catch. So definitely want to always be checking the program solicitation. And it's really important to include aspects of formative evaluation as well as impact and summative. And so as Wendy already mentioned, this idea that you shouldn't kind of hear from your evaluator once at the end of the year, at the end of your kind of project year. And the really great thing about evaluation is that evaluators, when engaged and when there's budget to do so, we can be involved and kind of provide you feedback that informs what you're doing, not just understanding what the overall impact is. So understanding like the monitoring of evaluation, providing feedback to the grant team, addressing challenges and satisfaction measures, right? So one great example of this is, you may find out that, the grant was supposed to start in July, but for whatever reason, you didn't even find out till August that it was going to be funded, which means you weren't able to hire students, which means that you really, really weren't able to start the grant until January, right? And so, of course, you would have to write this up in your annual reports to the grantee, but having an external person kind of systematically documenting what you've been doing, how things have been going, and including that from an independent perspective can be really useful to the funder as well, and providing feedback about, okay, well, what can be changed in the next year? Here's some feedback about when you do this similar programming or this activity again, how might you change it? That can be really useful. And all those sorts of things are formative to help inform what's actually happening. And then understanding the impact, right? So what are some of the outcomes associated with all of your efforts? Again, having an independent person help you look at this can be useful because Wendy, myself, and others bring a unique skill set when it comes to understanding outcomes and understanding, how skills have changed or knowledge has changed or behaviors have changed as a result of your efforts. And then looking overall, so taken together, now that things are rounding up, looking at summative. So what's the overall merit? What's the overall value? And then also taking a look at sustainability. What's going to happen when the money goes away? Funders like to see that, you may not be able to continue on the program as is, but what has been changed about the institution? Maybe there's a new degree program that's in place, or even a new course that's in place because this initiative or this project was funded. So what's going to live on? What's going to be institutionalized? Or maybe there's been new connections, new networking opportunities, and you have new projects because of the project that was originally funded. So as already mentioned, you just want to make sure that you align the activities of the evaluation plan with the activities that are proposed in the proposal. And Wendy's put a nice kind of graphic here of a logic model here that kind of looks at, well, what's the need? Okay, you want to enhance students resilient. Well, how much is that going to cost? What are some activities that have to take place? What are some outcomes? And then what are some benefits of these outcomes? I think one of the great things about working with an evaluator, especially early on, you want to kind of contact us before you but at least certainly before the grant is funded, if possible, but as you're actually writing up your proposal, this idea that we can help you think through making sure that your activities align with the resources that you have planned and align with what you're hoping your outcomes are. One of the things that evaluators have a really great eye for is, well, we hope to change, students' test scores when it's time for them to take their senior level test, or we hope that, we're going to be graduating more students in this field. And so one of the things that the evaluator will help you do is, okay, well, here's what you have planned for your project. Let's make sure that what your perceived outcomes are, or what you want your outcomes to be, let's make sure that actually aligns. And so sometimes we can even say, well, actually, the people who are going to be working with these students are actually going to need training. So let's back up. You should probably put in some training for these graduate students or for these faculty members, which can be really great. And that's really what number 6 is, to create a logic model or an evaluation chart to kind of show the alignment of the activities and outcomes, and just to look to see what, how, and what data will be collected and analyzed. And so just like researchers have research questions that guide the work that they're doing, as evaluators, we have questions and timelines and measures that we use that will guide the work that we'll be doing as well. So I'll let you, jump in here if you want, Wendy.
Yes. So some additional tips in terms of thinking about evaluation is Always try to use mixed methods to gather and analyze data. I think that the qualitative data can really tell a compelling story that the numbers can't always tell. So it may be easier to collect quantitative data, here is, a Likert scale, and this is how many people said that they were satisfied and not satisfied. One of the beautiful things that you can do in a survey is, especially for the online survey tools, is you can do some skip and display logic so that if someone says they're not satisfied, it's not just saying that they're not satisfied. In fact, you can have them answer a question, why aren't you satisfied? And write in a qualitative example. And that serves two purposes. One, sometimes people actually click the wrong button, or sometimes, they really are dissatisfied over a small piece that is important to the program, but may have really, really created a situation for this participant that made them dissatisfied. And that is information that you can internally give back to the program right away so that it doesn't happen. But you really do, as much as the budget allows, try to collect both quantitative and qualitative data to show a comprehensive story. One of the quick things that I'll say here is when you are collecting data, sometimes it's helpful just to think about the people taking the survey or answering questions, and make sure that the vocabulary makes sense to them, that you're not using jargon that you understand, that they may not understand, which creates them answering a question in a way that will not be interpretable for you. But also people, and I have seen this many, many times, some people like to go from negative to positive. Some people like to go from positive to negative. Well, if you're taking survey after survey after survey, you might just think it's negative to positive. So you could have a participant reversing how they're answering. So typically we'll always put something in the, sorry, I'm going beyond the evaluation, but we'll typically put something that says, please note the responses below go from positive to negative or negative to positive, just to prompt the participant so that they're giving you data that's useful. So, if someone's really dissatisfied, that they're really dissatisfied, and that not that they answered the survey responses incorrectly. One thing that's really important, if you're able, again, with the budget, is to move beyond self-reported measures. So if you are assessing someone's skill, you can certainly, you're asking them their perceptions of how much they've gained in that skill, but you can also observe a presentation. You can look at a paper that they've written. You can ask their mentor to give examples of the skill that they've seen practiced in the lab or in a educational setting, whatever that might be. So when possible, try to get confirmatory data and write that up into the evaluation plan. And then talk about how information will be disseminated. So yes, information you hope is disseminated to a larger audience if it's a large research project, but you also want to think about how providing feedback loops internally for program improvement, how that will happen on a regular schedule for the evaluation. And if things will be disseminated in more creative ways, in a podcast, in a blog, to students, and whatever that might look like, you always want that section in the evaluation plan. And then lastly, and I think Aisha touched on this beautifully before, is making sure that there's a plan for sustainability. Not everything will be able to be sustained after grant funding ends, but certainly there should be some progress to either writing a plan or at least detailing a couple of the things that will continue to happen based on the grant funding that you had. All right, so we both provided some evaluation examples. This one is mine. I refine them every single time, so I'm pretty sure that I have changed this one a little bit too. But you can see on the left, the evaluation plan that has the different sections, the implementation, the impact, and then the summative piece. You can see that clearly written out with each of the things that are asked for in the solicitation, which are how will you collect this data, how often will you collect this data, and then what are the actual indicators that you will collect. That is if you have more room for the evaluation plan. You could write something like that out. Now, NSF used to, and I think they still do, but I'm not going to say for sure, anything within a border, a box, you could change the font size. So you do have a little more leeway in this, certainly not making it too small that no one can read it, but trying to fit all of the pieces in there. And then on the right side would be, you can either have this above the evaluation plan if there's enough room, or this is something, a paragraph that you could write into the solicitation. Now this one is an older version, very vague. I think it's just boilerplate language, but you know, the evaluation team or you, if you are doing this, really should try to find some citations, if available, to support the reasons why you're doing the monitoring piece, the instruments that you'll use for the impact piece, and any other additional information.
Thanks, Wendy. And so here's just an example of mine, again, very similar to what Wendy has. On the right-hand side, you can see I have, you know, some key evaluation questions, a few indicators or criteria for judging quality, and then a high-level outline of the data sources and the data collection methods for the plans. And then on the left-hand side is just a little bit of the narrative that is used to put into the actual the description of the program when there's kind of the evaluation section of what's asked for in terms of like who is the evaluator, what's the approach that they're going to be using, what are the specific strategies that they will use and that I will use. And so again, this is these are the things that Wendy, myself, or whoever your evaluator is would write up and provide you with so that you can put into your proposal. So just a few other quick tips. You know, you want to make sure that the evaluation budget reflects the effort of the evaluation. Sometimes people will kind of think about the evaluation last. And so it's one of the really the first things that you should be thinking about. There's kind of different rules of thumb. And I think ultimately it really depends on the size of your proposal and of your grant, as well as the scope of the evaluation. If you'll be doing some evaluation, if it will just be the evaluator, if you'll have internal and external evaluation. Generally, you should be looking at somewhere between kind of like 6 and 10% of the budget of your project to go towards evaluation. But again, that can vary depending upon the size of the project. If it's a really, really small project, it doesn't really make sense to kind of have 10% of the budget. And sometimes if it's a really, really huge project that's like $10 million, it can be difficult to allocate that much to evaluation as well. But really, it depends on the role that you want the evaluator to play. The principal investigator and the evaluation team should have a collaborative relationship, meet on a regular basis, and provide feedback to one another, right? So for all of my evaluation clients, I either have monthly or quarterly meetings with them, just as kind of Wendy has described, and we have a good relationship. They kind of see the instruments that we're developing. They have an understanding of what it is that we aim to do and the data that we aim to collect. There's no surprises. They kind of receive oral feedback on how things are going before they receive reports. And so, you know, ultimately it's a relationship where the evaluator kind of has their role and the principal investigators have their role, but they are pretty collaborative in nature. And so you need to be able to kind of a good professional relationship and to work with each other. Also, with any project, there's lots of data collection that's happening, right? Like the National Science Foundation or whoever the funder is will often require you to collect information as a project from the participants and those who are involved about like how many hours are you working? How much did we support you? And then the evaluation also will be coming and asking questions. And so ultimately you want to make sure that you're not overburdening participants with data collection. And so that requires you to be collaborative, to be thinking well and to working with the evaluator to plan for, okay, when are we going to collect this data? How much data are we going to collect? And timelines is ultimately really important. And, you know, sometimes there's data that the project collects that is useful to the evaluation. So it doesn't make sense for me to go and ask that same sets of questions. Or sometimes there's data that I know the project needs. And so we'll include it in the evaluation for us to collect that data, and then we'll turn it over to the project because they may need it. And so really it's just all about working together and making sure that the budget really reflects the effort. I have had projects where you know, I've said, okay, I'll do something for you. And then everything gets sent in, and then it's come back and the funder said, well, this is what you want the evaluator to do, but I really just don't see a budget enough in here to make this happen, right? And so just being really thoughtful that everything's kind of accurate and reflects the work that needs to be happening, and having kind of open and honest and kind of clear conversations about what's needed versus what the budget is versus what can be done. Any other final tips, Wendy, before we turn it over to, time for questions?
No, I think you got everything. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, I'll turn my.
All right, I'm gonna